most beneficial to parents or families of current freshmen at Stevenson High School? Wouldn't you say, Ms. Scania? And I would like to introduce my partner in for the conversation tonight, and that is Miss Lisa Scanio. Ms.
Hi,
Scanio
everyone.
is a counselor at Stevenson High School. She may be some of your family's counselor. Ms. Scanio, you want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about yourself? Oh, wait, Scans, I muted you. Hold on.
Whoops. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
I was just saying I've been a counselor at Stevenson. This is my 12th year. Prior to that, I taught Spanish for a few years. So I'm just really happy to be here tonight. And I'm so pleased that so many of you are joining us.
Thanks. So tonight we are going to um, really, Ms. Scania, while we're talking, can you help me with on the participants and just letting people in as they come in? Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about what you can expect from sophomore year. So by now, your freshmen are well into their first year at Stevenson High School. Congratulations. I hope that you are enjoying being a Patriot or part of our Patriot community as much as your freshmen are. They're fully ensconced in the FMP program. Maybe they've gotten involved in a few co-curricular activities. They've learned how to navigate. Hopefully they've used our tutors and they've learned how to navigate our academic resources and supports that are really all over the school. But today, and so tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to split this into two parts. One is really connecting with Stevenson High School. And what can you do as a parent to connect with Stevenson and make the most of how to support your sophomore next year? Ms. Scanio is going to talk a lot about maybe some dates that you want to remember, some time frames to put in your calendar and say, okay, I have to remember this is something that I want to do for my teen. And then what we're going to talk about is, and so that may be different for every family, how you communicate with Stevenson, what classes you take, those kinds of things may be a little different. But the thing that's really very, very similar for many, many families is developmentally what is happening with your students. So I want to take this moment and ask you to think about who you were at 15 years old. Just quietly think about who were you at 15? What was important to you at 15? Maybe who was your best friend at 15? Maybe who was, what relationship did you have with your members of your family, members of your community? Did you have a job? Did you, what kind of music did you like? How much time did you spend with your family? And when you think about that, remember that now you are going to have a 15-year-old. And if you think about who you were and how much you wanted to do on your own, maybe you had a family like I did that really told me a lot of what I was going to do and what I wasn't going to do every day, right? I had a very strict upbringing. And maybe you didn't have a big strict upbringing. But at 16 years old, 15 to 16 is what your freshman turns in sophomore year. They can, in the United States, they can learn to drive. They can go by themselves to see an R-rated movie. And here's a crazy thing. They can give blood at 16. So those are some of the things that they can do. What they still need at 16 is, while a 16-year-old is becoming older, right? They get their car. First thing they want to do in their car is drive away. and they really want their independence. 16-year-olds are really skeptical about pretty much everything. You can tell them, hey, look, it's lighter out longer, and they may be super skeptical about it with you. But one thing they all need is they still need to understand what your family's boundaries are and where those boundaries are, and a clear understanding of where those boundaries are. Imagine yourself and imagine if where the boundaries are always changed. It would probably make you feel a little uncomfortable. And so one of the things that I can tell you about, and Ms. Scanio, let me know if I'm appropriate or inappropriate, that boundary situation really tends to help a lot more, help our students a little bit more than become a hindrance for them. Okay, so let's move on. And let's just do a quick reminder of how you as a family can stay in communication with Stevenson. So now through your freshman year, I really hope that you have started to receive the monthly Minuteman. And so that's that communication that comes out at once a month, and it has like little articles in it from our administration. Usually there's something from leadership. Usually there's something from Dr. Tweddell, Dr. Feinsheimer, Dr. Cortese has something in it. There's always something from on family engagement, those kinds of things. But also did you say something, Lisa?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm holding out.
Okay. You also should have the daily digest that comes every day. It is delivered automatically to your inbox, along with the monthly Minuteman. It is a really good idea because it comes every day, it's easy to overlook the daily digest. But the daily digest gives you a really good understanding of what's happening with your teenager in school. And it gives you a really nice understanding of what's happening in the school, what your teenager is dealing with in their school community, and ways for you to, when you're checking in with your student, maybe once a week or on whatever regular basis you have set up with your team to check in with them and make sure that everything is going well, for you to be aware of what's happening in the school. So, to know that maybe in 2 weeks is the co-curricular fair, or is spring break. And next week is the co-curricular fair. And let me just point something out about the co-curricular fair. That is not just for incoming freshmen. Many of you went to the co-curricular fair last year. And if your teen said, hey, I'm going to take a year off and I'm not going to be really involved in much, they are still invited to the co-curricular fair, and they are still welcomed in the co-curricular fair to walk around and meet the students that are in those clubs. And sometimes when they're a little bit older and they go to the co-curricular fair and they see the clubs that their friends are involved in, that may be an opportunity for them to be a little bit more willing to join a club or to find out more about it. But the daily digest and the monthly Minuteman are very, very important for you to, if you can't read them all in the day that it's delivered, please put them in a place where you will read them, because it always has very good information for families to remember and to anticipate, like scheduling. So it will always have information on like the ACT or the SAT and what's coming up, or days off, or special events at school, or things that your teen will be involved in. So it's a really nice thing for you to make a part of your daily activity. The other thing is our I'm just noticing how small that is. I apologize. our website. And on our website is information for everyone. And please familiarize yourself with the website. And if you don't do anything else, take the calendar and merge the calendar with your calendar. So at least you have on your, wherever you organize yourself digitally, you have the dates of what's coming up at school so that you know what's happening, because those are the kinds of things that are not, it's a little different when in high school that those, we allow you to, or we invite you to familiarize yourself with our calendar, but it may not be like listed out for you the way you may be familiar with it from any schools that you attended prior to Stevenson. So our website, Daily Digest, and the Monthly Minuteman are all really great forms of communication.
And I would
Now,
just add, oh, I'm sorry,
yes,
Mara.
please,
I would
go
just
ahead.
add, like, with the Daily Digest, and I think this is important for freshman parents to know. As you know, Stevenson has phenomenal students. Your kids are phenomenal students. And I've had some parents say, reading the Daily Digest, we have so much to celebrate at our school that sometimes it can be overwhelming when you see those celebrations. It can make you feel like, is my student doing enough? Are we, how do I get recognized? And I just want to say that as parents of freshmen, like, these things all happen in due course. So if you find yourself reading all the opportunities and possibilities at Stevenson and feeling like overwhelmed by it all, number one, that's partly natural. And number two, part of our work together, and you're going to hear Mara talk about this tonight, is helping your student find their sort of areas of impact and involvement. And that's part of the good work that we do to support your students at our school. So you'll hear more about that as well.
Thanks. So, Lisa, I'd like to invite you to kind of talk a little bit about the team that Lisa is part of, which is the Student Services team. And many of you are familiar with your Student Services team. But what I really want to talk about, invite Lisa to talk about a little bit more is what happens during sophomore year with the Student Services team, and how can you partner with Student Services to best support your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So every student at Stevenson has a 4-member student support team that's comprised of a counselor, a social worker, a school psychologist, and a dean of students. Our group together, our teams, meet weekly to kind of look together at any students that we need to be concerned about, follow up with, help provide care for. And we all do a little bit separate role, but work together as a team to kind of provide wraparound services for every student at Stevenson. A lot of the things that happen, one of the big changes that happens sophomore year is that students graduate to the world of a full period lunch that they can do with what they would like. They no longer have the freshman advisory that takes up half of their lunch period Monday through Thursday, like they're having this year. And so counselors next year will not have weekly access to students, because right now we're coming in to those advisory sessions once a week. And that's really how we get to know our freshmen. And we continue working with the same students. The SST continues working with the same students throughout their 4 years at Stevenson. So advisory is a really wonderful avenue for us to be able to get to know our freshmen so that we can maintain those relationships over the course of the next 3 years when they no longer have advisory. Another thing that you may have done this year is you may have signed up to meet with your student's counselor in a scope meeting. Those meetings are really just a nice touch point for us to get together, parents, counselors, students, to kind of talk through the year, how things are going. What are we celebrating? What are our goals? How do we work together to make sure that the student is on the path to achieving those goals? So that will, and then sophomore year, students and families are also invited to a sophomore scope meeting, which is a continuance of the conversation about the students' needs, and how we best support those needs. So that's, and then in addition to that, throughout the year, we have during activity periods, meeting with sophomores to review other resources that we have in the school, not only to support them academically, but to support them with career exploration tools and resources throughout the school. Anything I'm missing, Mara?
Not that I can think of. So the big thing that happens, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you think about sort of that path of the 4 years of Stevenson High School, and your freshman year being really about getting acclimated to Stevenson and understanding, how do I use this place to best fit me as a learner? Then your sophomore year is a great time for you to sit down with your student and start to talk to them when you're having conversations with them. Start to talk to them about, rather than how are you doing in the class, what do you like about the class? Because sophomore year is a nice time for your student at 16. They can start to drive, and some of them may choose to get a job in the community. And that's a way for getting jobs, is a way for them to think about, well, who do I want to be? What do I want to study if I choose to go on beyond high school to get some kind of an additional education? So technical school or college, or many of our students, we are a college preparatory high school. Many of our students will go on to college. And so it is a time for you to help your student really have a thoughtful conversation with you about, what do they like to do in their classes, and what's not interesting to them in their classes, because that will help them understand, what do they like about whatever the subject area is, and what might there be that is a little bit of a challenge for them. One of the things I wanted to show you is on our Stevenson Career Exploration page, under Academics, there is a tab called College Career Center. And under College Career Center, you can find information on the college process and what happens each year, right? Freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. And you will be invited in the fall. Ms. Scania, is the discussion with the college counselors in the fall for families of sophomores? I believe it is.
Off the top of my head, I feel like when we were looking at the calendar,
Yeah.
actually, I don't want to say for sure because I'm
Okay,
worried
we'll look it up. We'll look it up.
Okay.
Will you, while we're on,
fine.
you have the ability to look it up, and thank you. So one of the things is, you'll hear from the college counselors, and the college counselors will say to you, this is a year to sit back and don't worry about the college application process. And that is completely correct. They know their business. What it's a great time for is to talk to your student about career planning. And under Academics, under College Career Center, you'll find the Career Exploration page. And if you scroll down to Career Exploration, you'll see Community Partners, you'll see Student Career Connection, and you'll see College and Career Planning. Now, our community partners are for adults who would like to offer shadowing experiences to our students. The Career Connection is, let's say you have a sophomore, or maybe you have an older student that's looking for a job. There are so many jobs that are listed there, and the application is listed right there. It's a great resource for our students to connect with members of the community who want to hire Stevenson students to work in their businesses. And then there's Naviance, which is College and Career Planning. They are introduced to that during their sophomore year. But one of the things that you can do while you're working with your student, is you can scroll all the way down under Career Pathways, under work-based learning and volunteers. You can go through all of this. This is a great page to go through during sophomore year. And do you see this Stevenson High School career pathways? When you click on this document, you are going to get something that looks like this. And these are pathways for, let's say your student says, hey, I really like, I think I really want to go into education. And I think I may want to, or let's do something that's a little bit, maybe computer science or information technology. And they say, wow, I took this computer class and I really think I like it, or I'm in a club and I really want to think about how would I do that in college? This is not a checklist that you have to do everything on here. This is something for you as a family to look at and say, as you're planning, working with your counselor to plan your students' 4 years at Stevenson, you can take a look at it and see, what do they recommend that you take in 9th grade? It does not mean if you don't take all these classes, you're not going to be a computer scientist. That's not what it means. It's just a little bit of a guide for you so that you can sit down with your student and say, hey, what would be the next class that you might want to take? What would be some careers that you might want to look into? And that's what the career pathways does. If when you're looking at the career pathways and you say, hey, I can see maybe a systems network person, or maybe a computer scientist, and your student says, maybe I'd like to find out what that person does, they can then go and do a shadow at Stevenson of a computer scientist. And they can do that sophomore year and junior year. Senior year gets a little bit late to do that, but these are great opportunities for you to sit with your student, especially during sophomore year, and have that conversation about what interests them. It does not mean that you have to decide when they're a sophomore or 16 years old what they're going to do in life. What it means is this is a great time for you in a low pressure situation to have the conversations about what interests you, what do you like, and get to know your student a little bit better. And maybe if you have a friend that does what they think they might want to do, introduce them to the friend. Have the friend over for dinner, or go out for lunch, or go on a walk with them, and introduce the two of them so that they can talk about what they do, because your teen may find, wow, I'm really interested in that, or wow, that's totally not what I thought that person did for a living at all, and I don't want to do that. What do you think, Scans? Yes?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's really great about sophomore year, as Mara started to say, is that, you know, freshman year has been really a transition. Stevenson's a big school. There's a lot to learn, a lot of new faces and places and systems to get used to, opportunities to explore. Sophomore year, students are settled in. They have a little bit, they understand the school, the way it works, some of the things that are available. So it's a really opportune time to explore possibilities and interests. When junior year happens, then other crazy things start kicking up. We get a little bit closer to planning post-secondary. We throw some standardized testing in to really get it spicy. But sophomore year, we're not quite there yet. And that's why sophomore year is such an opportune time to explore interests and to support that kind of learning with our students.
I agree. Well said. See, the counselors always say it way better than the family engagement person. This is, we can't let any kind of conversation go by without reminding our families that while you are helping your student develop all of the skills of being independent and checking their own grades and what's due, checking their own Canvas, making sure that their assessments are reflecting what they want them to. Remember, this is the time when we are, as the adults in our teens' lives, slowly pulling back and becoming a mentor to them rather than managing everything in their lives. We want to start to build the skills that they are going to need when they leave us at 18, believe me, that takes a little bit longer than, just a couple months to build those skills, because we all know that the first thing you do when you learn something is it gets a little bit trials and tribulations, and maybe they fail. And so we want them to be able to fail in a place where they can learn from what they did well, and they can consider maybe the challenges they had and what they can do in the future to do differently. But there are a lot of opportunities for you as a family to watch what is happening. You can use Canvas, look at Canvas, and you can ask your student for the sharing code so that you can observe what is happening in each of their classes, observe the notes the teacher is giving, and all of that is fuel for those regular conversations that you're having with your student about what's working, what's not working, where might they be finding that they're having some challenges, what's going well, how do they want to do some of those things more often. And so if you are not familiar with Canvas, I am going to put the code for this document in our chat. If I can find our chat, there's our chat. I'm going to put this in our chat right now for everyone, so you can have this as a PDF. You can also find this online. And additionally, there is also a video if you want to click, and these are both found on the parents page under logins for Canvas, okay? Additionally, there is the interactive report card, and the interactive report card is set up so that you could use your Infinite Campus login and you can see it on your phone. So when you look at it on my screen, it looks like it's 3 separate documents or 3 separate columns. That's because when you look at it on your phone, those are the columns that come up, and you use your Infinite Campus login you can use it to check your grades. Please remember that grades are updated once a week. So if your student's teacher has not updated their grades and it's been 1 or maybe 2 weeks, I highly suggest that you help your student build the self-advocacy skills to reach out to their teacher, write an email and say, hey, I'm really waiting for the grade back on this, or I'm really waiting to see how I'm doing in this class. Can you help me with that? And then copy you on the email. What that does is it keeps you in the loop, but it teaches your student the very, very valuable lesson of asking for themselves, how am I doing? Because that's a skill that they're going to need when they're 18. And that's if they don't practice and practice and practice and get used to asking for something that's uncomfortable to ask for, it may be something that they feel really like they don't want to do when they get into maybe a college education situation.
And I would just add,
Yeah,
I would just
please.
add too, like I know as a parent, there's a lot of different systems to keep straight.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people probably by now are pretty familiar with the interactive report card or the IRC. That's where you see the grades. But if you're ever frustrated by the fact that when you're looking at that, you can only see what has already happened, and you're interested in knowing what will happen or what is currently happening or what will be happening in the next week that we can work together to prepare for, that's when you go to Canvas. That's where you're going to find like the day-to-day, the planning, maybe a class calendar, depending on how the teacher has it set up. So there's a lot of useful information that's a little bit more forward-facing on Canvas.
Love that. And if you're unfamiliar, I'm sorry, I didn't want to step on your toes. Yep, good. If you're unfamiliar with the way our grades go, under academics, under grades, you can find a video on understanding your grades, and it's a really nice overview of the way our grading system happens at Stevenson. Here is a link to the interactive report card as well. Okay. Course selection. Ms. Scanio, can you talk a little bit about what course selection looks like for a sophomore?
So next fall, we will, just like this year, we will have a Let's Talk About Your Future event, a no homework night, which is, and usually we provide guiding questions for students and families to talk about to kind of help them start to think about their courses for the following year. Actual course selection usually happens depending on the grade, starting in, I want to say early November. And then this year we actually finished picking classes for the following year, primarily by winter break. So what happens during course selection is counselors meet individually with students to, students kind of select the classes that they want to take. They meet individually with their counselor to go through those classes. Counselors are looking at a couple different things in their conversations with students. Counselors are mindful of graduation requirements and courses that will need to be taken in the following year. Counselors are mindful of college admissions requirements. If that's a goal for the student, that's something that we talk about with them. Counselors are mindful of requirements for students who might want to participate in Division I or II athletics in college. That's something that we talk about, and we make sure that the student's schedule reflects those goals. And then, of course, we're talking about interests and the best way to explore a student's interests and the right way to create balance in a schedule to make sure that we can devote our primary attention to the courses that we have and still get an adequate night's sleep and have time to participate in school activities, extracurricular activities, and family activities. How we balance all of that appropriately. These are the conversations that counselors will have individually with your student each and every year when they pick classes for the following year.
And so for next year, course selection begins on October 24th. And Let's Talk About Your Future night, that night with no homework, is October 22nd. And really it's really an important night for you to have time with your teen to talk about what classes they want to take and maybe look at those career interest papers and maybe have a conversation about, what are they thinking about? What do they really kind of get to know them and start to build those conversations that are so important as they're, number one, working with their counselor to choose classes, but also as they're starting to think about what's junior year going to look like when, as Ms. Scanio said, things get a little bit crazier, and certainly senior year as things they really start thinking about what they're going to do after they leave Stevenson High School. And, there is, if you do nothing else from tonight, nothing else, and you're still thinking about who you were at 15 years old. Some people say, oh, 15 was so great. Some people say, wow, I can't believe I was that way. I can't believe I wore that shirt, those kinds of shirts, or I liked that kind of music, or I liked whatever it was. I'll bet you really felt great when your family said, hey, I love you, or good morning, or what do you think? Or, thanks for spending time with me. And you really see your teenager and work with them and have time and conversation with them and get to know them as a person. That's really, really important. And so I really like this sort of slide to remind you that, you know what, it's really important to be around and say, come on, let's have dinner together. Good night. I love you. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. I really like who you are, because it's in those times when your teen feels really like, hey, you see me, or you know me, or you're taking the time to get to know me, and you start to build the trust that's really, really important to have as a base for when you're starting to have those kind of harder conversations around what do you think you want to do, and what are you feeling, and maybe you have a different idea of where things might go, and your teen has a different idea about where things might go. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there as a slight reminder as we start talking about developmentally what happens to a teen when they're a sophomore. They first start to get into clubs. And freshman year, they may be, many of you may have teens who are in 1, 2, 3, 4 clubs. Ms. Scanio, you have younger students. How many clubs in general were your freshmen in when they were first at their high school?
Clubs.
Or, like activities,
Well,
like,
like I mean, just a couple, honestly, at the beginning of freshman year.
uh-huh,
Because depending on what you're in and the time commitment, it's a
uh-huh,
balancing act. So for my older two, they were both in two sports, and that
uh-huh.
didn't leave time for a lot of other clubs. Over the years, they picked up a few more clubs along the way. Once they kind of figured out what they wanted to do. So it really kind of varies because it really is about balance. Like I'll have some students that are in so many clubs that it leaves me to wonder, like, do you sleep? Like, how can you really be involved in this many things to a deep degree?
Right,
It just a handful of meaningful activities, and what the exact number is probably depends on the student, but being
right,
involved in a couple of deep and meaningful activities, because it's a deep and meaningful involvement that opens itself up to more opportunities, opens itself up to leadership, opens itself up to real contributions, and also like really getting something out of it more than just another, name on the list, I guess.
right. So in freshman year, they're part of so many, so many, so many activities. Maybe one of the things that you may have as a conversation for sophomore year is starting to pare down some of those and finding that deep and meaningful experience, or that trying to think about, why do I like this club and why am I in it? And am I in it just to check a box? Well, maybe I'm not really getting anything out of it. Because when you think about who your teen is biologically, it's, I think if we were all sitting in a room together and I asked everybody to raise their hand if your teen is awake past 10 o'clock, many, many, many people would say yes. But it's actually biological that they want to stay up later at night. They sort of become kind of nocturnal. But the hard thing is they still need about 9 hours of sleep. And thank goodness we don't start until 8:30 in the morning, but that means you really have to help your teen try to get that sleep that's so necessary to the fact that they're still growing. And they also need about an hour of exercise a day as well. And yes, they have PE, but also we have a Patriot Wellness Center that is open until 8 o'clock at night for any student at Stevenson, Monday through Friday, and it's open on the weekends. So I kind of want to put that plug in there for you, that if your student, and there's buses after school that go at 3:30, 4:30, 5:30, and 6:30. So if your student wants to stay after school and get a good workout in, or run on the treadmill, or maybe lift some weights, or run around the track, or whatever it is, they can certainly do that and get some exercise in and sort of feed who they are, because they want to start to take advantage of the depth and breadth of experiences. And I wonder sometimes if we, going back to who we were at 15, what would we do differently? If you could be a student at Stevenson, what would you be involved in? What would you not be involved in? Where would you eat lunch? Would you bring your lunch? Or would you be part of the Poke Bowl Monday people? Or would you just bring a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to school every day? Think about it, and then think about the choices that your team gets to make. And how fun to have the experience and the conversation with our teens about, what are you thinking? What do you think you might want to be involved in? Because that leads you to having a conversation with your team about self-management and the necessity of having concrete examples, so that they can gain independence. Remember when we were talking about reaching out to a teacher and having you, as the adult in their life, help them craft an email to a teacher and copy you, because they need those concrete examples to start building the pathways of, I know how to do this. Would you agree, Ms. Scanio?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because they need to be able to speak up for what they need and understand how to get what they need. How do I ask a person who's in authority most of the time what I want, and how can I I'm going to put the teacher out, which is scary, right? And how can I ask them for what I want, but how can I be self-aware to know what I want? Right? So that's where you, as the adults in their life, can help them with that self-management and help them really kind of lean into being independent and say, hey, what do you think you need? Where did you have a problem? If you were asking someone, it's not like I just can't do the homework. Well, where did you get to? How far? What were you trying to do? And if you can help them through it without telling them the answer, that's great. But if you can also help them access a teacher or a tutor and ask for help, then that really builds their independence and their sense of self-efficacy. And like, hey, I can do this. I can reach out to someone and get what I need. Another thing is, as we were talking, that helps a student with their self-management, as we were talking about those career choices. Remember, we were talking about what do they might want to do, that when you're talking to them about that, it helps them sort of better understand their worldview and what's their role in that worldview, so that they can then start to feel empowered by their choices, rather than what we do with our teens and our younger children, when we say, here are the rules that you have to live within. When they're teenagers, especially when they start to get a little bit more independence, we can turn that and say, here are the choices of what you can do. So then they can choose what they want to do rather than be bound by rules. Teenagers, 16-year-olds love praise. Hey, I love the way you did that. I love the way you studied for that. Look how great you did. You studied for that test and you got the score that you were looking for. Or thank you very much for being so kind to our neighbor this weekend. I noticed that you took their garbage in, or you put their newspaper at their front door. That was really great. Because they really start to become more aware of themselves and their personal tendencies. And with that, and with the independence, also comes this sense of, I'm invincible and I can do anything. And I'm going to try as many exhilarating experiences as I can. And that's where those like boundaries, remember we talked about the boundaries, that's where those boundaries come into play, and those open discussions with your teens about what's good for you and what's not good for you, because they're also super socially aware. And
Mark, can
they're
I jump in for
very,
one quick
very,
second?
excuse me, yes, ma'am. Do you
Okay,
want me
I
to
was
go back?
around self-management. The other thing I would add is
Yes.
that one of the things that's so great about Stevenson and that we're a big place is that I do really feel, and our alumni always tell us how prepared they were for life after high school. And part of it is because when you're in a big environment, you have to learn to be a self-advocate. So all these ways that Mara's talking about and coaching students on how to advocate for themselves in the building, if they're frustrated, kind of empowering them. What did you try? Who did you ask for help? Who can you ask for help? I had a couple weeks ago, I had a couple students who were just very stressed. And the fun thing now with all the technology, back in the Stone Age when I was in high school, if I was having a tough day, I didn't have a communication device like stuck to my forehead that I could
Right.
text my mom, like, call me out of school, pick me up, I got to get out of here. I had to get through that day or figure it out or go talk to someone in the school to call my mom. They have a direct line all the time. So how do we build in that self-advocacy, that ability to access resources? You're getting the text message, I need this. How do we direct them? Hey, go talk to your counselor about this. Go talk to your teacher. Go to the nurse's office. Who did you talk to in the school? When they get in touch with me, then together we'll make a plan on how we can support you. That would be a big piece of advice to help build that self-advocacy, because those are the exact kind of behaviors that they're going to have when they leave home and go off into their brilliant future on a college campus, at a job, at wherever they're headed once they graduate from Stevenson.
I agree. Those are I love that idea of, hey, who did you talk to from school before you called me? That really teaches them to like figure out who are they around. The other thing that they're really doing is they're starting to think about relationships, and not just like dating relationships. Maybe that's part of your child's life, your teen's life, maybe it's not, but like friendships. Who am I friends with? What am I doing? How can I take someone else's perspective? Social media may play a part in that. Follow your children on their social media. Talk to them about what's on their social media. Talk to them about who they follow. Talk to them about what they listen to. Who do they follow on TikTok? What are they seeing on social media? What are they seeing on Instagram? Do they have a Finsta account, which is a fake Instagram, which I'm not sure is still cool. I have no idea. But talk to your students, your teen, about what's on there, and maybe have a conversation not from, oh my gosh, you're not going to do this, but from curiosity. Explain to me, why do you like that? Why do you like that music? Why do you like that? Why do you like that person who sings in a different language? I've never heard that language. What is it about it? Is it the beat? Do you know the language? Is it something you're studying in school? Is it something you've learned, or do you have a new friend that is interested in this? And so get to know your students so that they can start to have new customs, and they can have new experiences, but they can share them with you, and they can share what they're learning about their social world with you. And they can have those discussions with you about what are healthy experiences to have, and where might they be making some decisions that are not as healthy for them, that you can then have that conversation with them and be like, ooh, that's not such a great idea, because they really are starting to want to develop positive relationships with their peers and be able to relate to other people around them effectively, and be able to sort of be in a conversation where maybe they don't agree with what the other person is saying. And they learn a lot of this in school, but they also will really watch the way you work with your friends, your family, your colleagues. How do you talk about work? They're very, very sneaky that way, our teens. They really watch everything we're doing, even though if you look at them, they look like they're just not impressed with us much of the time. They really are watching what we do, and watching how we regard one another, and how we are settling our own issues, and what are we doing? They watch our counselors. They go to our counselors and say, hey, I'm having an issue with this. Can you help me with it? And then they sit back and they watch. How are you navigating? Who are you contacting? Who are you helping, talk to me like you got to talk to someone, or whatever it is. And they're starting to think about, who are they? Who are they in groups? How are they in groups? And how do they want to act? The last piece I wanted to talk about in terms of your teen is really their responsible decision making. Remember, we talked about the fact that when they're sophomores, they're going to be really pulled to like the thrilling situation and the extreme thing, like I don't know. I always think of sophomores as like sort of someone riding a bicycle down a bumpy hill without a helmet, like just taking it all in and doing everything they can to be, to just embrace life the most, in the most open way that they can. But in doing that, they really are starting to be able to focus a little bit different, recall information, organize information. They're really, really aware of global issues. And your sophomores next year will be able to sit around and talk to you about, we're having national elections next year. What a great time to sit down and talk to your student about, what are you thinking about these issues? What, how do you feel about it? And have an open conversation with them. They are really, really aware of anybody around. So I don't know if you've ever had this situation, or Scanio, if you've ever had this situation. When you're walking through maybe a grocery store, or you're in a restaurant or something, and you say something to your teen, and your teen says, "Oh my God, I can't believe you just said that to me. Everybody saw that." And you say, "Nobody was looking at you." And they say, "Everyone was looking at me." Well, that's because they're a young teenager and they truly believe everybody is looking at them. It's kind of what they have to grow through. They, they're really wired that way to think, because they're worried about, they're thinking about their own self in the world. So they're very quite aware that everyone is thinking about themselves, their role in the world as well. And so that brings me to sort of your role. So we've really talked about, who is your teen? How is your teen, your sophomore, who is becoming more independent, is learning to drive, is kind of settling into who are they and what do they like at school, and kind of figuring out what clubs do they want to be in, what clubs do they not want to be in, who do they want to be friends with, maybe who do they want to grow into friendships with, who do they want to have less of a friendship with? What's your role? Because for their whole lives, you have been the manager of everything that they've done. And probably through freshman year, you have helped them manage much of freshman year. Stevenson is a big place. There's a lot of help at Stevenson, but for many of you, it's a new place for you as well as for your team. And what an exciting place it is. And now is the time for you to start stepping away, teaching them a little bit more self-efficacy, helping them as a guide on the side, and being the mentor, so that they can start practicing these skills on their own, and they can start building their own skills and how they're going to navigate the world after they leave Stevenson High School. And many of them will go on to universities that expect a lot of them. And so how can we help our teens sort of be ready for that? The best way we can do that is to sort of put ourselves in a mentor role. So remember when I asked you to think about who you were at 15. Now I invite you to think about the last time you were evaluated in any shape, in any form. Maybe you own your own business, and maybe it was a customer that evaluated you or gave you feedback. And what did you want from them? What kind of conversation did you want from them? What kind of feedback did you want from them? And think about that the next time you're working with your teen, or you're sitting down with your teen and saying, "Hey, classes do you think you want to take? What courses do you think you might want to be involved in? What might want to do in the future?" And think about becoming sort of their mentor rather than their manager. Help them have free time to explore their interests. Help them think about who they want to become as an adult. Help them think about how they're changing from being a young child to being a teenager. Help them think about the consequences of, if they're going to start driving, how do they want to drive? Are there rules around curfew? What's going to happen if they break the rules? What kind of clear consequences are you going to have for them as your family? And then remember something that every student needs. Every student needs to know that you love them because it gives them a sense of worth. They need to hear about larger stories, maybe stories of the history of your family or what you went through as a teen, because it gives them a sense of perspective on not just the world is what I experienced, but there's other people. When they have a little bit of work, it gives them a feeling of significance. That doesn't mean that they have to go and work at Taco Bell, because that was my first job, but that they have to go and get a job outside the home. Some students don't have time for that, but they can have responsibilities in the home, which will give them a sense of, hey, I'm needed here. I'm important here. Don't ever forget to have fun and connect with them and help them understand that they are a necessary and loved part of your family, because that gives them a sense of belonging. And when you talk to them, listen to them, but also give them advice maybe, because it also gives them a sense of direction. Scania, got anything to say?
No, I think that sums it up really well. I just wanted to add, I know there were a couple of questions in the chat. I tried to answer those. So
Good.
if you had a question there, take a look. As always, we are here to partner with you. I say this as a counselor. So if, as we're talking tonight, questions came up for you, things you want to communicate about, things you're wondering about, ideas you have on how we can support your student as they're growing from a freshman to a sophomore and beyond, please reach out to your student's SST, because we really do want to hear from you. The families I've been meeting with in scope meetings, I always tell them, you can wait for the scope invitation to schedule time to talk to us, but you don't have to wait for an invitation. That we are at Stevenson to work with our students and families. And so if you have questions or concerns, don't even think twice, reach out to us. That's why we're here. We want to hear from you, and we want to partner with you to support your wonderful students.
Well,